Today, we're going to just go with the flow. We're going to set up a couple of little rules, and then we're going to create a drawing. Okay, so say this is the horizon. So now let's start with 2-point perspective. So we're going to just pick 2 points. Okay, so one here, right? Now, I'm just using like a pastel pencil, not using any graphite, all pastel, it's chalky. All right, so say we're going to start with this angular cube. Okay, now, so this would be the top. Now, let's do the sides are always parallel. You can use the ruler if you want. Make it very symmetrical. We're going to do something a little bit modern, so it could be geometric, like this. We want to base this also on the figure. So let's start off with right here. Let's do what we did. Let's block them in. So let's start with the proportions. So the proportions are, let's measure them. Eight heads, 8 inches. Okay, so this is about it. We'll measure a couple of spots. 8, 1. Let's just go to the middle. The top. Okay. So this is a little cut off. All right, so say those are the proportions. So we start with, we don't need a full head. We don't need a head yet. So this is the center. Okay, so here's the center. So let's do our, I do like to start with that bikini line. That. The bikini line, this would be the head. Let's put the head in for now. This would be, then it would be the neck. The oval of the chest, shoulders. Okay, now legs come out. Right? Knee. Let's start with one leg. Okay. And just keep it like that. We'll go down now the middle line. Now what about, we can have our hands. And foot to walk. The action. All right, how about this becomes oval. Then let's see a little bit of the top of this, and we have a pipe. Bones, then the pipe comes out, and then knee, foot. Now, would be, okay, so the middle. Here was the middle. right? Belly button, nipples, chin, top of the head. Hips, ankle bone, and the arm, right at the belly button is the elbow, and then the hands hang below the center. So, hands. Now, let's see the face. Now, we want to put face, the ear, there, neck. Maybe I'll get some charcoal. Let me finish this off. I'm ready to pull that charcoal out. I don't know why, I just love it. And you know why? Because I'll get to smear everything. Charcoal. Little dancer. Balance. Well, why don't we just smear it a bit? Okay, let's smear it, and do a brown. Okay, brown. I'm going to simplify. So, maybe let's just use our cylinders to understand things. Okay. Okay, now, so 8 heads. Okay, ready? Let's try it again. 8. This is like 7.5. That's okay if it's 7.5. 7.5 or 8. Okay, a little bit more. Yeah, those are the 8 heads. Let's start with a lighter color. Alright, now here 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so that's the middle. So now let's do the same thing. Let's start with the underwear. Bikini underwear. So we have the 2 points of the hips. Then we have the head. Shouldn't be any hard. This is the size of the head. Neck. And I always start with an oval because it's like the rib cage. It's like a bird cage. Okay, here's the knees, middle. So we know here, you know the points, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 heads, 7.5, 8 heads in the body. And let's see if we could turn this a bit. Now, maybe she's throwing, and this is the right hand. So now let's say this side would be up, ready to catch something. Okay, so there's the middle. And it would be that way then. So we're putting our second figure in now. We have the proportions, okay, the 8 heads in the body, from the top of the head to the chin. From the chin, nipples, nipples, navel, navel, center of the body, crotch. Then you skip to the knees, skip to the feet. 8 different sections of the body. So we're just kind of having fun, seeing how they fit into this background. We have the 2-point perspective background that we started with that is kind of faded away into the background. And so now I'm trying to just kind of fool around. So since we went over the basic shapes, the cylinder and the sphere and the box, I figured I would do the human proportions very similar to the way I did that by diminishing the legs to just tubes, flattening all the proportions, not showing any detail in the rib cage or anything. So let's do a third. Okay, now let's start a third figure. So we'll start with the pelvis as like a box. So we have a seated figure, not really reclined, just seated figure, stretching up. So now we have some interaction between the different characters. Someone seems to, maybe they're doing some type of sports, or maybe she's throwing something to them, but there is an interaction. So she's sitting down, leaning on her left hand and reaching up with the right hand. So we still have to follow the same proportions. So now it looks more like a rib cage now, with the spine reaching up into the rib cage. So as long as you're getting the idea of the three-dimensional way a body appears on a two-dimensional surface, so we're sort of using some tricks to find our way through the body. So we're keeping it into separate sections. The limbs are just tubes. Simple enough, that bend in the middle. Then we have the 3 other parts of the body. Start with the middle of the body, the pelvis, the rib cage, and then the head. So one is sort of a circle, one is more of an oval, and the bottom is kind of a box. So we're trying to learn how to just to create art. We're just learning something new, hopefully. So this might help you in creating artwork. So now we switched over to the soft pastels, and we're going to give it some color. So we'll start with a dark blue on the top and then a lighter blue. So what I'm doing is blending it with my finger, adding the soft pastel, blending it, trying not to go too heavy with the pastel so that we don't ruin the picture. So that happens very easily once you start to establish where everything is. You could overdo it. So you don't want to rush. Take your time. So we put a little bit of blue in the background, and now I went with the eraser to suggest a couple of clouds. Where it was already light, I picked the spots that are really light. Make it a little easier. So now we're going through the whole figure with a little bit of a yellow. So these are sort of analogous colors, the colors that are next to each other in the color wheel. So from blue to green to yellow. And then a little bit of a golden color. So if we go straight through from blue to maybe an orange, then we can have a complementary color pattern. So right now it's an analogous color pattern, blue, green, yellow. So once I put the background in, then I have to go over the figures in the foreground one more time. So we're bringing it in some detail, and now I have the blending stick, so I'm going around with the eraser and the blending stick to smooth everything out, to make everything look nicer. So this very tiny eraser, it's like a millimeter in diameter. I could show it to you, and then we're using the soft pastel pencils, and no graphite is being used, because even though this looks like a pencil, this is still a pastel. So they're nice and soft and blendable, so once you start smearing, it travels nicely throughout the page and smooths everything out. Okay, erasing, and now we have our three figures. So maybe we could give it a little bit of life, or do we want to keep it more mechanical? So since this was maybe a modern picture, maybe we'll keep it mechanical. Okay, so we're going to clean this picture up. Hopefully it will look a little nicer. I'm going to get out the darker colors. Let's see, we got a dark charcoal pencil, and we have our pastel pencils. No graphite is used in this drawing. We went right for the blendable pencils. So now we're going to go back into the 2-point perspective. So we have the 2 points on the horizon, one on each side, and all the lines converge to that vanishing point, and then you eliminate the point when you finish with the drawing. So you have the 2-point perspective. That's how we could determine where this building is. It's very subtle, it's in the background, but there's some kind of building there, and then you will know with the 2-point perspective where the angle of every window on the building. So it's very subtle in the background, but it's an easy way to navigate your way through the drawing. Okay, so now I'm going to erase. We're erasing a little bit, and I'm going to get out the Indian ink. So that's my favorite. So yeah, the Indian ink. These pens, there's different tips you could put on, and they're very accurate. So I don't know if you ever used this before, but I like it better than a marker. And you could do one dot, because it's, it's a commitment. When you take out this Indian ink, it's such a commitment that you could just do almost like an etching, one little dot at a time. This way you don't mess it up. Alright, so I'm putting some soft pastel into the background. I'm adding some green in the middle. So I want to keep it light. I don't want to shade it too dark, the background. So we started with sort of an analogous color pattern where we have the blue on the top. Then it fades, like a darker blue on the very top, then a lighter blue. Then it fades into like a green. Suggestion of trees. I don't have to draw the trees. All I have to do is put some green there. And so now we're back to the Indian ink. So just very carefully, sort of, now it's becoming mixed media with the Indian ink. So we went from the pastels to soft pastel to the ink, which is really great because you can really define it. So, and then the nice thing about mixing the ink with the pastel is it's sort of, you know, this is all like watercolor. Once you go dark, that's it. You're stuck with it. You can't erase it or anything. So right away, there's always a certain part of the picture. Oh my God, it's too dark. There's too much ink on it. And so now, since I do have, so now I'm going over it with a white chalk. I like the chalk better than the pastel white. I mean, it sort of could fly away a bit. You know, it's not that seeded into the paper, but you could spray it with a fixative if you want, if you feel it's too powdery and it might come off. So you could use a fixative. Okay, so now we're back to the soft pastels in the background. Okay, so then we, like I was saying, we went from an analogous color pattern, the blue, the green, and then yellow. Analogous colors are right next to each other on the color wheel. Now also, I decided to now add the orange at the bottom, so now it's a complementary color scheme. I mean, if you want to put labels on things, it could now be complementary because there's a large area with the orange and a large area with the blue, and those are complementary colors. And then the in-between colors. All right, so we're just tightening everything up. What is this now? The white? Yeah, I think this is the white chalky. Well, that was probably the eraser. So we use all these different erasers. This very accurate eraser. And so I hope you enjoyed this show today, and I hope you learned something. So if you could be so kind to like and subscribe, I would appreciate that. I'm Paul Petronella. I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.